Today I'm sharing a very special conversation with Kyle Engelman from Grounds for Health. She is the Director of Philanthropy. Grounds for Health is a charity that focuses on screening for cervical cancer in coffee communities in Africa and in Latin America. And it's our charity that we focus on donating to every month. If you've bought a bag from us or not, we donate a portion of our proceeds to charity every month. Even though it's not a huge amount, we share what we can. So in this interview, we talk about what is Grounds for Health, how did it even start? We talk about Kyle and how she fits into the whole equation and how it works, how this charity in particular works, why they chose cervical cancer of all things, and why the coffee community, which I thought was really interesting, which you'll see. And lastly, we talk about just being a woman in coffee industry, whether it's roasting, whether it's in the farm stages and things like that. And I think we don't flesh out that conversation, but I think it's the start to a great one that I'm exploring, and you're maybe going to see a little bit more of that from me coming on this channel, because it's just something I'm interested in, and I think I'm in it. I'm going through it, and I don't have all the words to articulate exactly what I'm going through all the time, but I think that may be important to just bring about that this is my honest experience. My goal is for you not to buy anything, okay? It's not hey, buy this, buy that, donate this, okay? My main goal with this is to really get people to be more aware, and that's how my content has been. It's like when I found out the incredible journey that coffee goes through just to get into our cup, I was like, oh my gosh, so many people have to just know. They have to just know where this comes from and how it gets here. And our ignorance is just a luxury that, I don't know, I feel like you can't really afford that anymore and just be like just going, kind of mindless through life. And I think when you're unconscious about things, accidents can happen, like the one that happened to me. And so the point that I'm trying to make with the type of content that I create and this conversation is to generate awareness and just more a consciousness in oneself. And it's not to pressure you to buy something or whatever, to make you guilt trip you or whatever, like nothing like that. I want you genuinely to just know this little part of the world and how these people are helping this little part of the world that is directly correlated to the coffee that you drink every day, most likely if you're into specialty coffee. Okay, so enjoy.
How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for taking the time to chat with me. I'm really excited.
Oh my gosh, of course. Thank you for your support for Grounds for Health. I'm just so excited to get to know you and to get to know your company, and all these things.
Yeah, basically we're very small, just roasting at a home coffee roaster. I got into coffee roasting like 2 years ago. So I'm still learning and everything. And I went through a little bit of an accident at the end of 2020. And then I experienced so much support, love and care from the coffee community. I was really blown away by it. And as I was recovering, I was thinking, how could I, because it really changed me, how could I be more compassionate and not just wanting to give back? Because initially that was the feeling. It was like, how do I give back?
Right.
But I think I needed to really go deeper with that and go like, well, how can I be more compassionate with everything that I was doing? And then that's where I stumbled upon you guys. I was like, how could I give back, but like in coffee, so it kind of like makes sense for us, I guess.
Yeah.
Like it didn't have to, but it just like that seemed like a really nice bridge for me, not only to give for myself, but how could I speak to other people so that it could make sense for them, right? So it's like, I thought, well, there must be like coffee charities, right? So that's basically what I just Googled that. I had no idea. I've never donated at all to any charity. I've never even thought about it. I just sort of like the typical American, just always kind of like thinking about the self. And that's something I want to change. I guess with this conversation, it's like, how does one, I don't think everybody should go through a life-threatening situation to finally like, oh, I should be more compassionate. That's just what happened in my experience, right? So
Yeah.
I just want to, now that I have these things like coffee and now this connection with you guys, and what I hope would be a deeper connection, how do I start? I don't even know, like,
Right.
what's the word after that? It's like, how do I start? And I think that's probably what a lot of people who maybe they had a ping or a thought, maybe they saw a Grounds for Health Instagram post and like, that's nice. And then they just went about their day.
Right.
Like, how could I go deeper with it and how could I be more, I guess, emotional with it? That's what I do too. I like kind of tie in the emotionality of things and the why behind things with coffee. And I also use that as a vehicle for spouting my truth. So I'm just wondering, what are those steps for me? And that's what I wanted to accomplish with this interview, and also just kind of learn about charities, like, and learn about how you guys got started, how you fit into the equation. I'm really interested in that because charities, they say, oh, no nonprofit, but I'm like, how do you live?
Right.
So even though I don't have the like foresight to just go and Google it, I think it's so much better to just have a conversation, because I could totally do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are my goals. I'll be looking down a little bit. I have my little notes right here. Yeah, I just really wanted to open the door and start the conversation.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
well, when you were talking
yeah.
about the like wanting to give out of compassion, I was, listening to or watching some of your videos and getting to know Black City's story. And when you talk about honoring the cup,
Yeah.
that is the same to me as compassion for the people who touched those beans from the beginning all the way through the supply chain, all the way to you and the people who drink it. And I think that level of compassion is what we're after when we say, particularly to coffee donors, and to coffee consumers, think about where this came from, right? And those are communities across the world, that are, and women and families that are putting so much time and effort into growing those berries. And it's so easy for us to get to our end of things and throw together a cup of coffee and, gulp it down and pay whatever we pay for it and go on with our day. And so to me, it's the compassion is just written into what you describe when you talk about honoring the cup.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I was really thinking, how could I get people to understand? Because, when you do discover, right? When you do discover, oh my gosh, they have to wait till it's ripe. Oh my gosh, they have to pick it by hand, right? And you don't just have a machine just do this for you.
Yeah.
I was just blown away, but I was like, how do I wrap all of that incredible journey into a phrase or something? Dare I say, it has to be marketable. Right, in order for the layperson to just merely open their mind.
Yep.
Yeah,
well,
right.
I think you're a brilliant marketer because that is exactly it. Honor the cup.
Okay, so I want to know, how did this all start? How did Grounds for Health? I mean, I know we could look at 1996 you guys got started or whatever, but why did you guys choose coffee? What was it that, pinged you to that, oh, we need to focus on the women who are picking these berries? How did that all start?
Yeah, it was this, you probably read it on our website, so hopefully I'm not too repetitive, but it really was this serendipitous trip where Dan Cox, who was working for Green Mountain, went down to Mexico and brought along his a really influential person in his life, Francis Fote, who was an OBGYN. And so brought him along as a family member, family member, just said, come with me. Sure, go ahead. Let's go check out Mexico. And while Dan was visiting the farms, Dr. Fote was visiting the hospitals and said to him, wait a minute, hold up. I'm seeing all these cases in the hospitals of cervical cancer, and cervical cancer is entirely preventable. And that was literally it. That was the spark. You take this compassionate, driven, energetic man, Dan, and you take the sort of person to plant the seed, Dr. Fote, and Dan came back and said, we got to do something. We got to do something, right? And I think it's our 25th year right now. So we've been doing
Awesome.
a lot of reflecting. First of all, yes, thank you. I think it's awesome as well.
Congrats, yeah.
Most nonprofits are not around for 25 years. So and Dan is still a huge leader and champion for us. So I think that's a big part of it, is that he and the coffee industry rallied behind this idea and have not given up, which is amazing. And what I think is really why it sticks is, yes, it's about cervical cancer, which is entirely preventable, and it shouldn't exist. And yes, it's about coffee, right? Because these are hard to reach, underserved areas of the world, right? Like you go to Origin, if you go to Peru, you fly into Lima, and then you fly into Chiclayo, and then you take a 10-hour bus ride into Jaén, and then you take a moto 4 hours up into the mountains. I mean, these are really, some of them are super remote places. So these women don't have access to healthcare. So that's why coffee resonates so much, is it's needed in places where coffee grows. Cervical cancer prevention is. But I think why it really sticks is because it's about equity. It's about the fact that women who are drinking the coffee in first world nations aren't dying of cervical cancer, right?
Yeah.
And that's because we have access to healthcare services. We have a public health system and an education system and financial means to go and get screened starting from a young age and throughout our entire lives to find any signs of precancer, get treated, and never go on to have cancer. And women in places where there isn't the healthcare system, the education, or the financial access don't have that. And so for me, we got started, like I said, because of this serendipitous trip. But why we've lasted so long is because Dan and coffee and healthcare and hopefully everyone around the world can rally around this idea of equity.
Equity. Okay.
Yeah.
Very cool. So how do you fit into all of this?
Yeah.
Miss Kyle.
Thanks. So I actually worked at Grounds for Health starting in 2015 as a program manager. So I had finished my master's in public health. I'd worked in global women's health before, and
That was my degree.
Oh, no.
Yeah, that was my degree. So that's why, too, I was like, this sounds like what I would have been doing.
Yeah, totally.
If I stuck with it.
Oh, that's really cool. I like that. I like knowing that. So I was looking for global women's health work. I was looking in Vermont because that's where I wanted to be. And I found Grounds for Health, and it seemed way too good to be true. It's an organization that I think the values run so deep in what we do. I've worked in international aid and global health and a lot of other organizations, and there's a lot of what people often call mission creep, right? Like you change your mission to go after the money. Oh, sure, we can do that project. It's not our specialty, but you're going to give us money for it, so we'll do it, right?
Mission
or there's
creep.
Or there's a focus on, we'll do the projects, but we do them in a way that's more about advocacy and big meetings, and they're all in capital cities, and the money doesn't actually trickle down to the poorest people in certain countries, right? So I'd seen a lot of things in working in global development that, that's where my heart lies, but I wanted it to be done in an ethical way, and Grounds for Health was just all of those things. We hire staff locally. We train providers who are part of the local healthcare system, who are in the remote areas. We educate women through their local resources, right? So we bring in community health volunteers who are from those villages and those towns and speak the language and know the culture and are going to get out there and say, hey, have you ever heard of cervical cancer? This is what it is. This is why it's important to get screened. There were so many things. And at the end of the day, this is so important. We train everybody to treat every individual woman with complete dignity and respect when she comes in for these healthcare services, right? So this is about that woman feeling safe, feeling like she has informed consent, feeling like every step of the exam that's going to happen is done in a way that really respects her. Because, for us, it's not a big deal to get a gyne exam, but in some of these countries it really is. And in both cases, women deserve really compassionate, woman-centered care.
Are you talking about cultural guilt and shame of this, like, this like sort of taboo thing to talk about?
Yes, absolutely. Okay. There's a lot of it. I mean, there's talking about cervical cancer is taboo. The way women die of cervical cancer is not, talked about, right? Because there's a bunch of taboo around if you have precancer, it comes from HPV, which is a sexually transmitted disease. It's very common. Like 70 or 80% of people will have HPV at some point in their lifetime. But just the fact that it's a sexually transmitted disease puts stigma and shame around it, right? Yeah. So in all of these things, in the education we do, in the way we train providers, in the way we have women get screened, all of it is wrapped up in this idea of let's reduce the stigma, let's reduce the shame, let's let women be respected and have dignity and have privacy and have autonomy as their experience, as we're going through this.
Are you seeing like a change in those cultures that you go into individually? Because I'm sure when you first started, it was hard, right? So there's this new thing, there's a program, and everybody's like, you try it, or what, like there wasn't this consensus, right? Yeah. So have you seen, now is it just way easier? People are just more accepting in these cultures? Or I'm sure they're on different levels.
Yeah, I mean, every not only every country, but even within country, regions vary, right? So there is variability. Once we've started a program and the education gets started, one of the biggest tools for seeing that change that you're referring to is that once we get a few women that come in and they get screened, and if they need to, they get treatment, they really become the spokespeople. I mean, we can shout from the rooftops, or our staff, our local staff, the community health volunteers can shout from the rooftops that this is important and this isn't going to be painful and this is so, but it isn't until, someone's neighbor or auntie or cousin or friend comes home and says, oh my God, I just got this done. It's not scary. And in fact, they treated precancer and it's going to save my life. And that's when we start to really see that shift that you're talking about. We see more women coming in, it's so that. And the other thing is, I started as a program manager in 2015. We screen women who are 30 to 49 or 25 to 49. So that's like the age group where you're at highest risk of having the virus that could turn into cervical cancer. And so when I started, there was still, I sense from my experience with the programs, there was, the older generation of women, there was a lot of stigma, there was a lot of shame, there was more that they just wanted to hear about it from their trusted folks, and they wanted to do it privately. And nowadays, I think the generation that's coming up to replace them that will need screening, there are cell phones all over the world, as I'm sure you know, and there's messaging and marketing and media. So it's a little bit, the idea of getting a gyne exam or, having a test for HPV is certainly, I think, less stigmatized, but it really does depend on the community. And there are certainly some where we're really starting from scratch with the education and the building of rapport and trust. And
interesting. So it's kind of like, so in America, I remember getting my 3 vaccines or 3 visits or whatever to be vaccinated against HPV, right? Yeah. And I got that when I was young. Yeah. So with you guys, you're starting with the older community so that they could like say, hey, it's okay for the new younger community to come in. Hey, this is normal. So it's kind of like it's backwards.
Well, part of what's happening is vaccines are now being rolled out in many countries for the 12-year-olds, mostly is usually when that series starts. Right. So once vaccines are rolled out for 12-year-old girls and boys would be ideal, we don't actually need to screen women. They have a vaccine that prevents the virus, right? So what we're doing is we're actually going and we're targeting the women who
may already have it. I see.
Didn't get the vaccine either because they're too old or, exactly. So it's
Yeah.
less that we want them to influence the younger generation, just that we actually want to get to them. We want them to get screened. We want them to get
That's
treatment
a
if they need
perfect,
it.
like, because my American brain is all right, vaccine already. So it's like already we
Right.
don't have that starting from scratch mentality of like, and that was
Right.
just, I'm a perfect example of our ignorance, you know? But yeah, that's why I want to have the conversation. Like, no, we get, like, there's, you know, still steps, you know, 1, 2, and 3 to get to that
Yeah.
vaccine
But
part that you're
what's
talking
cool,
about.
I mean, what you're saying and what I think is super cool about this is that this is truly a preventable disease, and it's
Yes.
something we could eliminate, right?
Right.
Just like, you know, we're working on worldwide elimination of polio and all these other, you know, public health diseases. If we get everyone vaccinated and then we play catch up and make sure anyone who wasn't able to get the vaccine gets the screening and the treatment, that's it. Like, we're done. That's our
Wow.
goal, right?
Wow. Yeah. I read that's your main mission. It's like I
Yep.
can't, you know, paraphrase or whatever, like until there's no one left to, you know,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
How long do you think you guys are projecting? Do you have your numbers? Do you have your stats? I mean, you've been in the game for a long time. Are you
Right.
projecting anything? Do you have like numbers already when you'll be
Yeah.
done?
So, right.
I mean, it's like an impossible ask, but
Yeah. Luckily, it's not just us. The World Health Organization, so we have been in the game a really long time. And we've just said all along, this disease is preventable. We got to do something about it. You know, we got to reach the women who aren't being reached, and we're going to be here as long as it takes. And, you know, the global health community kind of, there were a few other organizations, but kind of took a while to come around to saying, okay, cervical cancer is going to be a priority now, you know. And just in the last couple of years, the World Health Organization stepped up and said, all right, we're going to make this a priority. We're going to say that we need to eliminate cervical cancer. And they did a call to action where they're basically saying, globally, we want to eliminate this disease by 2025.
wow.
Is crazy. Yeah,
Soon.
so awesome. The big thing, and I'm just going to have to be honest about this, is it's about resources, right? So there are some newer tools, particularly that allow a woman to take a sample and find out herself if she has HPV without ever having to go to a clinic. Like, we could walk around, get a self sample from her, run it in a lab, send her a text message and say, you're good. You don't have a high risk strain of HPV, you know, go back to your normal daily life. Congrats, right? Or we could say, you have a high risk strain of HPV. Please come to the clinic. We'll get you a treatment and then you'll be great. Go back to your daily life. You know, congratulations. So there are some new tools that make the ability to screen and treat women a lot easier. And there are now, you know, lots of research and many different companies making the vaccine. So if we paired those two approaches and infused it with a ton of financial resources, really at the end of the day is what's needed, we probably could eliminate cervical cancer by 2025.
How much is a ton?
Yeah, I'm not even going to pretend to know those,
Okay.
right? Those health economics. But, you know, we're one actually pretty tiny player in this space that would contribute to that. I think, you know, it's going to take many nonprofits and many governments and healthcare systems in the countries around the world to say, this is a priority. We need to roll this out. We need to make this happen. And where I think Grounds for Health really has something to offer that space is we've been doing it for 25 years, and we've been doing it in the really hard to reach places with the, as we talked about earlier, with the women who may not have ever heard of cervical cancer or who may never have been to a health clinic or had a gynecologic exam. So we have so many lessons and so many adaptations to our program model that are saying, all right, if we want to do this globally, if we want to eliminate this disease, we can't just do it in the wealthy nations. We can't just do it in the capital cities. We've got to do it across the whole country. And we've been the boots on the ground, figuring out how to do that efficiently and effectively. So now let's, you know, get more energy behind it and share our learnings and, really scale this up across, as I said, across different governments and across different organizations.
Could you lay out the sort of layman's chain of events that happens? Like my audience as roasters know, we know what happens from when they pick it to when it gets to your cup, right? Farm to cup.
Yeah.
Could you let us know what's the chain from say making a donation or acquiring a resource, right? Mm-hmm. Or maybe even it's before that, it's a lead to get a resource, right? And then to whatever that is, which is like getting a woman screened, if that's the end of the chain.
Yeah. Let me try. Let's see how I do. Because it's kind of a supply and a demand issue, right?
I see.
So from the supply,
ideally.
Yeah. So from the supply side, we get a donation, say at Grounds for Health. Mm-hmm. That money goes into our program budget, which is our clinical consultants and our local staff, who are all healthcare providers in the countries where we work, which right now are Ethiopia and Kenya. Mm. So our staff train local healthcare providers who are at the health clinics how to screen a woman for cervical cancer and how to provide training. And they donate the equipment and supplies to those local health centers to be able to do that, right? So that's the supply side. That's where the money goes. And on the demand side, our staff are also training community health volunteers. They're working with coffee cooperatives. They're working with other local leaders and influencers to say, okay, here's what cervical cancer is. It's preventable. Here's how we do that. Can you go out and get in your communities and let women and men and families and everybody know to come to that women should come to the health center to get this screening, and between the ages of 25 and 49. So that's the demand side, is we've got to educate enough and drum up enough interest and, urgency that women then come to the clinic where they're matched with those providers that we've trained and the supplies that we've donated, and then they're able to get the treatment that they need.
Yeah, pretty simple. I mean, that's what I assumed, but I definitely wanted to hear it from you. In your time there, now that you've spent here at Grounds for Health, is like, how effective do you think this charity is? Do you have a scale,
Yeah. So I think, and I believe our numbers speak for them as well, not just my opinion, but I think we're incredibly effective. We're able, in the last 6 months of this year, in the middle of a global pandemic, we were able to screen almost 10,000 women.
Versus?
You mean compared to other times of year or
other
organizations?
So like a marker of success for you guys. Like, so I've seen all the numbers and I'm like, that's great. They look huge.
What does that mean?
In comparison, yeah, exactly. In comparison.
Yeah. So, I don't know if I can think of a great comparison for you. First of all, I think right now our numbers are really high for us and growing. Like over the last few years, a couple things that we've done have made us even more efficient and effective than we were, which is we've put a lot of, there's only 3 folks who work out of the US that are on payroll, and there are 8 who work in the field. So we've put our staff and our expertise into staff in the field, and we've said, you guys know your cultures, you know your languages, you know your environments, you know the resources available better than anybody. So let's put our efforts towards you. But it also makes us more efficient and more effective, because we're not flying back and forth to do the education or do the training or do the campaign. It's all there. It's ready to go and be rolled out anytime. So that's certainly made us more efficient. Ethiopia especially, but Kenya as well, have large populations. So we've been in countries in Latin America. Our goal is to continue to expand and get back to Latin America. But the coffee growing populations in Latin America are smaller country by country compared to, say, Ethiopia. So that allows us to reach that many more women. And we're supporting 50 health clinics right now across Kenya and Ethiopia. So that's, 50 catchment areas of women who live around those health clinics that are able to come and get services. So I think all of those things have contributed us to being, we've always had impressive numbers. And at the end of the day, a life saved is a life saved, right?
Right. One is greater than zero. Yeah.
Exactly. But
sure.
I do think we're at a state of pretty high efficiency. And with self-sampling, what I was telling you about, where women can sample themselves and not even have to come to the clinic, that has a real potential for economies of scale. If we're able to find the right program model, we can really get to more women very efficiently with that.
Yeah. I love self-sampling. It's just like it makes everything so easy.
Yeah, totally.
I wanted to ask, as we're coming a little bit to a close, I want to cover. I have too many questions, but
well, it doesn't have to be our only conversation.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. What are your most So with all that being said, numbers are really great. We just came through a pandemic. You guys did really well through that. I was reading about that. What now are your most challenging things that are keeping you from growing? I'm hearing that education is 80% of the pie, 20% is like the funding. Because you get funded, but then boom, man, like so many people need to train, need to educate, need to grease the lines of culture and things like that. So what are the main big challenges for you guys as you come to that 2025? Everyone is screened,
Yeah. I mean, I think that actually it might be more, honestly, I think it might be more 80% funding, 20% education at this point. I mean, I do think, because totally what you're saying is right. Lots of people need to get trained. Lots of communities need to learn about this disease and how preventable it is. Lots of women need to get to care. And, my experience in the field as a program manager was that, the first 40% or 60% of the women you want to reach are actually fairly easy to get to once you put all the pieces in place. But it is pretty tough to then get up higher, now that thanks to the pandemic, people are aware of things like talking about things like coverage. What percentage of people do you want to reach? We would like 70% of all women in the target age group to be screened. And of those who need treatment, 90% of those who need treatment get it. So, like I've said, depending on the community and that sort of thing, getting to that first 40 to 60% is pretty easy. Getting over the hump to that 70% screened is actually harder. So I do think there's a lot to be done, as you said, around education. And this is a thing where, again, back to the idea of having local staff on the ground, boots on the ground, like we have got to stay there and we've got to stick it out until it gets done. We can't just say like, oh, we had a really successful launch and we got so many women. Great, we'll move on. Like it's going to be a push. But honestly, I do think that the world at this point has the tools, has the research, has the knowledge, as do we at Grounds for Health. And what really we need is just the money behind it.
For people to care enough to donate.
Exactly.
See.
And it has to happen globally. I mean, certainly Grounds for Health would always benefit and be able to expand to more countries and reach more women with more money. But honestly, on a global scale, big unilateral and bilateral and multilateral aid organizations need to say, foundations need to say, we're going to put, millions or billions into this.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's still quite a ways. I mean, like I make my little donation, but I think, and I was getting down on myself for no reason. I was like, but it's something. And I feel I made the conscious decision to change the way I think about spending this money, however, whatever the amount is. And I think like, that's the thing I think I need to incorporate into my messaging as I start talking about Grounds for Health, or even just like thinking about the bigger picture and how would I, I guess communicate that in a way that, in a message that actually speaks to somebody where they go, I get it. I'm gonna do something.
Right.
Like What have you seen that works the best? Since I'm very new to this, what have you seen that works the best on your end? You've been in the game a long time. What I guess what are the best language things that people have been responding to that has helped Grounds for Health?
Yeah, that's a really great question. I think drawing the comparison to drawing awareness to the idea that women are growing your coffee and they're supporting the families and the communities that are growing your coffee, right? They are directly influencing and have a role in the supply chain is meaningful, right? I think there's certainly something about access. You know, we've often been heard to say the woman at the end of the road, you know, like these are women who do live in really rural, agrarian, coffee growing places that are far out there. They're at the end of the road and nothing ever reaches them unless we make a point of doing that. That's been a message that's really resonated. Self-sampling has been really exciting to talk about because it just makes a lot of sense that a woman would be able to do that.
That's awesome.
And then I have to say, and this is not a message, this is just something I've seen, you know, the specialty coffee industry has been really impressive in their commitment and the longevity of their commitment. And I think part of it is just a little bit around it kind of being the right thing to do, right? Seeing that this is a preventable disease in a population that all of our, you know, in the coffee industry, the profit and the success and all of that is directly linked to the farmers.
Right.
And so this is kind of like a little bit of a no-brainer. You know,
it's a duh. It's like these are the communities that are growing your coffee that you're making a living off of, and that you're being so quote unquote fancy about. This is my own like self speak, but it's like, hey, dummy, like this is where it comes from. You know, take care of it, or at least appreciate in some way. And I really just want to extend that to whoever listens to Black City Coffee, or whoever watches this interview. Or it comes in contact with us. It's like, I think it's going to be a really cool. It's one of the best vehicles that you guys chose coffee, because in specialty coffee they already care, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
That was so smart on you guys to be like, hey, you already care about this chain. Like this is the same chain, almost in a way, you know. So yeah.
And I do. I mean, the message that I really am excited to get out there more and more too, because so I worked in a program manager role, then I left Grounds for Health for a couple of years, and now I'm back in a philanthropy role, which is kind of this interesting two sides of the coin, but it does
What does that mean, in a philanthropy role?
So I'm now the one who's going after the money. So I used to be, you know, managing the programs and being at all the trainings and spending a ton of time in the field and looking at our numbers, like how many women have we screened and treated, and how can, you know, and now I look at our numbers in terms of who's donated and who's gone up, who's gone down, who else should we go after, how should we message this upcoming campaign, that sort of thing. So I'm now thinking a lot about the messages, as you said, whereas before I was thinking more about the programs. And I really love the idea of also talking to women-owned businesses and women in coffee and women consumers of coffee, and sort of having the global experience of saying we can support women around the world who we are tied to every day when we drink that coffee. You know, I think oftentimes it's easy to get in our world of where we live and think that a woman in Ethiopia has nothing to do with us. And that's not true at all. Literally, if you're drinking a cup of coffee where some of the beans come from Ethiopia, her life does have something to do with you right there. So I think that's beautiful. I think that's so connecting. And I want to think about how we can really build on that.
That's so interesting. Yeah. I got that question when I was going through recovery, and I got the chance to just talk to some friends who were just getting introduced into specialty coffee, and they asked me that question, and I was not prepared for it. They said, what do you think about being a woman roasting coffee? And I was like, I don't know. I'm just a roaster. Like, I didn't know how to, I don't know if it's how I was raised or whatever, my social upbringing, whatever, but I just never thought of myself like that. Like, oh, yeah. I'm a woman and I'm roasting. And it was like a flag that I was waving. Not that I'm not feminist or anything like that. It's just not something I was so conscious about where I could give you a really solid answer. Like, this is what it means.
Right.
Have you got that question before, and how did you answer it?
Yeah. So, it brings up a really good point, Meg, which is that I also, that same message can go to any person. You don't have to be a woman to sit here and be drinking a cup of coffee and be thinking about the farmer and say, you know what, I can honor them by, supporting them having access to healthcare that is a basic human right that isn't, necessarily available around the world. So, so that's a great point for me personally too, is like, how do I get, every person to believe that we're all connected and that, there's beauty and in an opportunity in this. I think the woman side is actually, also just a little bit easier because we've all had the experience of having we've had a gynecologic exam, and, and that's probably why you got the roaster question too, right? Like another female roaster has had to be in a competition against 90% men. And so was finding that kinship with you and like, ooh, what's it mean to you? Yeah. And for some people, the identification of a woman really resonates. And for some people, it doesn't. And that's great too. Like, wouldn't it be awesome if we all moved towards a world where we don't ever have to ask that question of what it means to be a woman roaster?
That's why it's confusing
or whether you want
to
donate to women's health, right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
How awesome would that be if I never had to say women's health? I could just say health.
Yeah. Like
donate to our organization.
Health.
Exactly.
I think it goes apart into marketing, right? I mean, like, whether we like it or not, we're humans and we like marketable stories. We like to be sold to. Sometimes we want to be taken on a journey. And sometimes, I guess, using the woman vehicle can benefit you in that way. And maybe that's the way I have to look at it, where it's like, it doesn't have to be this like super confusing thing. What do you think as a woman? It's like, no, just like, I'm a woman and this is what I do.
Yeah. And it's also back to like messaging and marketing is it depends on your audience, right? And, I think that we as an organization believe that this is just a basic human right, that human beings have access to healthcare services that can save their lives if they are available, which in this case they are. And it happens to be cervical cancer, and it happens to be a cancer that predominantly, leads to mortality in women. But like, how cool would it be if we never had to mention that? We could just talk about donate to the organization but there are audiences, as you say, who it's really going to resonate that these are the women, and for really good reason too, because in a lot of these countries, women are the ones that are, waking up super early to make the food, to take care of the children, and to go out to the fields and pick the cherries. And, so there's something about what a woman's role is that, speaks to certain people.
Yes, it's something I definitely want to investigate more in myself as I getting older. Like, what does it mean? It's not like I was like shunning this question. I was kind of surprised at myself that I didn't have a better answer. And I want to use this conversation and many more like it to develop that, right? Like, just to start the conversation with myself. That's why I record and document everything, and I keep everything up where I sound dumb like 2 years ago, and I'm like, look, but I've gotten better.
Yeah. Well, I really love how intentional you are. It just,
I'm trying.
I can tell it's in your brand. It's in this conversation. It's woven throughout.
Thank you, Kyle. Thank you. So
Yeah.
I think we're coming to a close right here. Is there anything that you would like to leave? You have the floor, and if you could let people know where to find you and how they can support Grounds for Health, please.
Yeah. I think just a huge thank you to you and to Black City Coffee for this opportunity to chat and share our message and reach your followers, but also for your donations. And you made reference earlier about, oh, is it too small? But it's not. First of all, no gift is too small. And I also wanted to point out that the ongoing nature of it is really meaningful, right? So the fact that it's, you've sort of said, I'm going to keep at this. Is that type of donation and that type of donor is especially impactful. It takes a lot to bring in new donors, but it's really lovely to have folks who stick around. And your message is super powerful. So you're doing a lot. So thank you.
Thank you. That's very nice.
Yeah.
I received that. Thank you.
And then, to find us, we're Grounds for Health, www.groundsforhealth.org, all written out. We're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on LinkedIn. And there's a spot to sign up for our e-news if you want to get some news from us. We try not to hit you with emails too frequently, every couple of months or so, but our Instagram, we're posting things a few times a week just for the little short updates. And donations can be made online at our website. There's a whole link right there. Or you can, if you are into snail mail, send something to our office. And that info is also on the website. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I would love to send you guys some coffee. I was wondering how, I don't know. I remember you guys were taking donations of coffee. But people were sending such huge amounts. I was like, I don't know if they're cool with just one bag. Where was that even? I'm like, oh, you can use this in your office. So I don't know.
So our auction is like a big specialty coffee auction. Yeah, with green coffee that then roasters and baristas will buy and roast and sell and all those things. But we all drink coffee in the office and love it. So we would greatly appreciate a sample of your coffee with your super sweet brand. I love the bags.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll definitely send some to you. I'll send something. What do you prefer?
So, we're all a little different. There's only 3 of us in the office. I tend to be a lighter roast girl.
Okay.
Yeah. And I like floral and fruity. But then, we have a woman in the office who does dark roast.
I gotcha. Okay.
Rich and velvety. So whatever you have that you think is good, we will happily slurp.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for spending the time.
Of course. Yeah.
I'm that much more educated about charities and how things work. And for me, I think it's really great. It just opens a door for me, and hopefully it would open the door for whoever would watch this interview to help them just care just a little bit more, or maybe it's not even about caring about something outside of themselves. I think that intention of caring does something for you internally, like that you've made that conscious decision to care. And I think that for me, that's the big picture. It's like, cool, I've done something, I've transformed something within me. That feels good, and that's going to be the goodness for everything around me. So that I hope that's what happens for the audience. I wish you the best, Kyle. The next time we chit chat and stuff. And I hope that you guys reach your goal for sure.
Yeah, well, and I hope you just have a great time and lots of success with your business.
Thank you.
Like I said, I love the brand and I love the message. So best to you.
Thank you so much.